Well, I would just start and say that I'm very surprised that Netflix won this. We'd been operating under the assumption that there are three subscale apps in the market, Paramount, Max, and Peacock. And so we always put a higher probability that those would be the ultimate winner of this Warner Brothers asset because it would allow them to take on Netflix. Here we're confronted with a situation where the biggest app, the most successful app, is actually, trying to get bigger. So what am I listening for? I mean, the street is very confused about this transaction, I would say conceptually. And so what they're really focused on is what is the company saying about when this can be accretive to earnings per share? And they're saying that's 2 years after close.
Jason, is this a deal that longer term will be beneficial to Netflix, do you think?
Well, let me say this. Netflix has always said two things consistently over the years. One is that they were interested in video game content, and the other was that they were on the hunt for intellectual property. Our hypothesis always was there was a common substrate that sat underneath those two comments, which was Netflix was having difficulty getting global operating leverage on their content spend, meaning they could spend money in Poland and get a bunch of Polish net ads and Polish engagement, but it did nothing for them in India. And they could spend in India, but it wouldn't do anything for them in Brazil. What video games and intellectual property do is it allows you to get scale on your content spend, which is sort of the ultimate elixir for a Hollywood studio, right? How do you spend the dollar How do you spend the dollar once and have it resonate sort of around the world? And that's the North Star. So could this ultimately be successful for them? Yes. I mean, if the intellectual property, if they harness that IP and make great IP, they can resonate globally. I mean, that's exactly what we've seen other media companies do quite successly with M&A.
Jason,
think Pixar, Marvel, Lucas.
Yep, absolutely. And Jason, you've known this company from the get-go. You know this management team well, highly regarded on Wall Street. Their stock has been a tremendous success story here. But one thing that they have not done, don't have experience in, is a big acquisition. What's your call there? How do you think that's going to play out?
That's true. I think that they will probably be successful with this only because they have a pretty good reputation in Hollywood for taking care of the talent. And so I think half the equation here is how do they take the sort of brands that sit there conceptually and sort of take care of the producers and the actors and the directors and really focus on those pieces of IP to make great content. If there's been a failure for Netflix to me over the years, it's that for the $18 billion they spend on content, there's actually very few pieces of wildly successful content. And so that it's less of a merger integration issue as it is, can they sort of keep the flywheel going that Warner Brothers already has and continue to leverage this IP to make great content? That's the threshold question.
Most people farm this out. Jason, folks, has an intense focus on both Netflix and Disney. How does the Walt Disney Company respond to this transaction?
Well, they've bowed out of this entire process. I mean, when we look at all of the apps, we measure how much engagement do you have per day per user, and then what is the consumer cost per hour viewed. And Netflix is the undisputed champ, high engagement, low consumer cost per viewed hour. Disney is sort of in the middle. So there isn't a real crisis for them. And then you have the three subscale apps, Paramount, Peacock, and Max, and that's where we thought a transaction would go on. So I think someone like Disney can bow out of this, and it's not a big deal at all.
All right. Well, what does this mean for Paramount Skydance? They took a big swing here, and it looks like they whiffed. What did they do?
Well, this is what's so interesting. So, one of the reasons we were long Warner Brothers is we said, look, there are three subscale apps, and that's an odd number. And so what that means is if one of them puts themselves up for sale, like Warner Brothers did, you're going to end up with someone that's the odd man out, that's the loser, because if Comcast bought it or Paramount bought it, the other one is sort of out to lunch, right? This is the thing that we never imagined, which is, well, if Netflix ends up buying Warner Brothers, now you have an even number of subscale apps, right?
Yep.
With Comcast and Paramount. And so we might see another transaction.
I think you're right. Mr. Zaslav, I think he redid his contract, so he gets paid here. What do you think happens to him? Is there a role for him at Netflix, do you think?
Gosh, I don't know that. I would say the street in broad brushstrokes was a little bit disappointed with the performance of Warner Brothers as a standalone company.
Yep.
So if he didn't get a role, I don't think that the street would be disappointed.
I look, Jason, at the first meeting between the White House, or just as a broader statement, the administration. CNBC has a quote, heavy skepticism coming out of the White House this morning. How should the management of Netflix address the president of the United States?
Well, this reminds me a little bit of when AT&T tried to buy Warner Brothers, and there was a lot of, that was under the first Trump administration, and they went through this, protracted legal battle, and we sort of laughed at it because when you went through all of the sort of metrics that the law uses, HHI indices, level of concentration, market share, there was really sort of no cogent argument that the government could put up. And so I would broadly say the same thing here, which is if you look at this in terms of, straight HHI metrics, I think that it's not as difficult of a deal to get done. Certainly at the studio level, if you look at the content spend of Netflix and Warner Brothers, could there be a bigger issue at the app layer, right? The consumer facing side? Maybe, but I think that they can address that, with remedies or consent decrees or something that sort of gets around.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Sure.
Sweeney informed, sure. Jason informed. To Lisa Mateo's point, why don't they just say to the president, we're going to do a 5-year lock on the Netflix subscription?
Maybe.
Doesn't that solve the problem?
By lock, you mean a price lock?
Yeah, price lock. You just say, we get the sensitivities here. No one trusts us. We're going to go to $24. Look at YouTube TV, what it costs.
I know.
Jason, discuss that.
Well, I hear you. I would say that as I've listened to regulators look back on mistakes they've made, they've broadly come to the conclusion that those sort of remedies don't really work because they're temporary, and then 5 years go by and you're always on the hook to sort of renew the remedy. And so they look for more structural solutions now. That tends to be the way the regulators lean, that they don't like 5-year locks as much as they like separation of assets, right?
Jason, Brian Roberts and the Comcast folks down there in Philadelphia, again, that's a management team that likes to do deals, likes to do big deals, transformational deals. Where do you think they go from here?
Yeah, I don't really know. I would just go back to my comment earlier around, I have 2 subscale apps if this transaction is consummated with Comcast and Paramount.